Hello, my name is Alice Driver and welcome to the Resilience Sessions podcast. And I'd like to welcome Ray Winstone and Ken Bellringer.
Hello. Morning.
Thank you so much for joining us and being part of the conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Then how are you both?
Oh, and I'm all right.
Good.
Yeah. How are you, Ken?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
Good. And you two actually, you know each other, don't you?
Well, we've met a couple of times, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the first time was in Solihull, wasn't it?
Yeah, many years ago when I was first injured, yeah.
So that was the old hospital in
Yeah,
Birmingham
yeah.
where defence medicine was based, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then you came to Headley Court.
Headley Court,
we met there.
Yeah, we've done the whole thing there. I went all the way through there.
Yeah, I was in rehabilitation. I was in the prosthetics room being fitted for a new leg, and I was covered in plaster of Paris at the time.
We always start the podcast with each guest introducing each other, if that's okay.
Yeah, who do you want to go first?
Ray, would you like to go first?
Yeah, okay. This is Ken Bellringer, otherwise known as Ding Dong. Right. He joined the army and served with the Royal Logistic Corps as an ammunition technician. In 2009, whilst helping a colleague who had trapped his foot on an IED, Ken was injured in a blast, losing both his legs. And it was above the knee, wasn't it, Ken?
Yeah, both of them, yeah.
Yeah. He shattered his pelvis and badly wounded his arm and hands. After a lengthy recovery, Ken continued to serve for the British Army until, what was it, earlier this year?
Yeah.
He adapted to life with his injuries, focusing on his family, and began telling his story in schools in 2016.
Thank you, and thank you, Ray. I look forward to finding out more about you, Ken. So now, Ken, would you like to introduce Ray?
This is the famous Ray Winstone, or should I say the infamous.
Yeah.
He was born in Hackney Hospital in February 1957 and spent the early years of his life playing on the bomb sites of Plaistow.
Yeah,
or
Plaistow.
Yeah, get that right.
That's the posh bit.
Yeah, come on, Ken.
At the age of 8, his family moved him up the A10 to the cultural wasteland of Enfield. From that moment on, Ray was constantly looking for ways to get back home to the East End. From banging up on his dad's market stalls. What's that, Ray?
Banging up when you're shouting out £2 for 2 bob.
Oh, got you, yeah.
Do not squeeze me till I'm yours.
Yeah, I miss all that. I come from a market town. So I miss that,
I actually had a job on a fruit and vegetable.
Did you?
I did, and I was terrible at banging up.
So he's banging up on his dad's market stalls to winning 80 out of 88 bouts as a 3-time London schoolboy boxing champion for Bethnal Green's famous Repton Club.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a hell of an achievement, Ray.
That was an education, actually. It's a funny thing with boxing, you know, it's a team.
Yeah.
You get and you support your boys. So you meet people from all different walks of life, and it starts to set you up for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
The way you conduct yourself with other people and that,
Yeah.
you know. And it's a channel. You can channel whatever you're feeling and whatever you're thinking into something that's good. Anyone who climbs through the ropes will respect the other man, you know, and it's a great thing, really. Everyone just thinks about boxing as being a violent sport.
You know, I mean,
it's a lot more than that,
when at a very young age, I did a little bit of boxing training. I got hit in the face a few times. I thought, I can't bite or kick them back, so I gave that up. I'm rubbish at fighting. Having achieved the rare distinction of being suspended from nursery school, how did you manage that?
It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. I'm innocent. I'll take the fifth on it.
We believe you, Ray.
He was asked to leave a series of educational establishments, including Drama College.
Yeah.
That didn't do you any harm, did it?
No, it didn't.
Before finally graduating with first-class honours from the University of Life. You've done all right for yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, but there was, you know, there's times in your life when you actually, I don't know, you question yourself. You have doubts about your own ability, and I still do to this day, I guess, in a way. It's but it's that thing of climbing through the ropes and looking across the ring and knowing that you can't win that fight, but you've got to dig deep and draw something up inside you to, you know, at least come close.
Self-doubt can be such a tricky emotion to navigate. If you're not careful, it can really stop you in your tracks. And I know in my own life, I've at times had to have a real word with myself and dig deep. But you've just got to keep going, Ray, as you say. But from what you've said, it sounds like boxing has given you the principle, the values to your life.
I believe it all comes from boxing. It's not just me. I still I still meet up with the boys that I box with
Yeah.
on all levels from my club, at least once a year. But once a year, we all kind of try and get together. And there's still that respect, and everyone does something different. You know, some people work in the city, some people, you know, work on market stalls, some people are not working. But it's a leveller.
Yeah. I think there are lots of similarities between the values that you've taken from boxing and those that you will have gained from the military, Ken. That sense of camaraderie, respect for others, you know, people coming from all walks of life, and also that discipline. Would you say that those military principles have helped you deal with the challenges you've had to face?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just the physical injuries that I've had to deal with and get through. It's the massive changes and the mental side of things and the fear unknown, and a lot of those things that I've picked up in the military have certainly helped with that.
I think it's getting over the fear, because I was frightened every fight I had. It's going into the unknown. And,
it's a healthy fear, though, isn't it? It's a healthy fear.
The healthy fear is trying to get over the fear.
Yeah.
You know? I remember I used to be terrified of the dark, and I sat downstairs one night, turned all the lights off when I was a kid, and sat in the middle of the room all night in the dark to try and beat it. Never beat it. I'm still scared of the dark. But, yeah, it's just trying to overcome something. But for you, it was bomb disposal.
So, Ken, you had a great career in the army, and it took you all over the world. And then you found yourself in 2009 out in Afghanistan. Can you tell us what you were doing out there?
My job in Afghanistan was to make safe the Taliban bombs. The Taliban were the enemy that we were fighting over there, and they would place bombs out to try and kill British forces.
Okay, so you were part of is it a bomb disposal team?
Yeah, bomb disposal team. I would lead a bomb disposal team, and I would actually be one of the people who walked down the road, or the track as it was in Afghanistan, and I would deal with the bomb that was there.
And what was it like being out in Afghanistan? Was it like anything you'd ever experienced before?
No, I'd been on operations to Afghanistan, to Northern Ireland and Iraq and other places, but Afghanistan was very unique. The way it was extremely hot. We lived in arduous conditions, and it really tested soldiering skills that I'd learnt over the years. And every time you left a safe location, it was physically and mentally challenging. And I always used to say that when you got back to a safe location and you could take your body armour off and you could relax, you really had earned your day over there.
Okay. And so on a daily basis, were you going out were you proactively looking for these bombs, these IEDs, improvised explosive devices, or was it more of a kind of reactive thing, or how did it work?
Sometimes it was reactive. Patrols would go out from the units over there, and they would find a device, and then they would call us in, and we would fly in, deal with the device and go on from there. And then sometimes we were embedded with units, and they might have to clear a whole route, say for a supply run or to set up a new base, and we would be proactive in that way in making sure the area was safe.
So an incredibly dangerous job.
Lots of dangerous jobs out there. I always say, I was just well trained, and also I'm not doing this by myself. I have a fantastic team of searchers and advisors that I work with. Yes, I might be the person who ultimately walks up to that device, but it's taken lots of other people to get me there. It really is a massive team effort.
Okay, so can you tell us what happened in that year you were out there on the 15th of November?
Well, we'd been there about 4 months. We'd got used to being out on the ground, what we call ground truth. The search team that I worked with were experienced. They'd done a lot of jobs before and done a lot of searching. And the day went like many others, but without being complacent. And we searched along a track, and a member of my team, he stood on a device. But on this occasion, it didn't explode.
Okay.
But he couldn't move. He was stuck. As I'm preparing to move him, there's an almighty explosion. And then it goes all Hollywood. It goes all really slow motion.
Yeah.
You know, I'm flying through the air, there's a big boom, and then there's a big singing in my ears. And I do remember thinking, this is going to hurt when I land. And when I landed, it just knocked all the wind out of me. And I'm laying there with my arms up here, and my eyes are tightly shut. And I'm thinking, I'm all alone. And my helmet's come off, and it's choking me. And I felt someone beside me, and I was like, get the helmet off, and he got the helmet off, and then he went really quiet. Suddenly I'm thinking he's in shock. So how do you deal with shock? Reassure someone, warmth, reassurance. Well, there's plenty of warmth. That's all right. Reassure someone, and I'm saying, yeah, everything's going to be all right. Just don't panic. Things are going to be fine. And when I reflected on that, he's probably looking at me and going,
Oh,
you ain't going to be fine.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then they got me, they carried me up this hill, they got me to the helicopter. And what I always take from that day is, that is probably one of the most serious situations that a person can be in. And they described my injuries as the most severe injuries that they'd managed to save. So their skill was phenomenal. And yeah, I was in the army, and I was nearly killed by a bomb doing the job of the army. But I'm also alive because I was in the army,
Yes.
because I had exceptional people
The medical,
around
the
me.
medical,
Yeah.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable, fantastic. And I'm very, very lucky. That's the way I see it, that I am a very, very lucky person.
How was your mate?
Killed, unfortunately. Lauren
Was
was killed. Lauren was thrown into the river,
Yeah.
and he was actually found by a US Navy dive team. He was about 300 metres downstream in the river, but unfortunately dead. And, the way I live my life is, because of people like Lauren, and I have other good friends who were killed over there, their family would swap with me tomorrow to have their loved one back, regardless of the injuries, and be thankful for it. So I have to be thankful for what I've got, and that's where I feel very lucky.
Yeah.
But that's just such an amazing attitude to have. And even in that moment when you'd been blown up, you were still worrying about other people. And Ray, you've actually been out to Afghanistan, haven't you, to visit the troops?
Do you know the thing is, it's kind of, because going there changed my life, and I was only there for a week. I went out there with friends of mine, Wing Commander Sean Rolls, and I was invited by the boys in a naffy one night, drunk with them all, and they said, "You want to come out there?" I went, "Yeah, of course, I'll come out there." Next thing I know, I'm on a plane from Prize Norton. So you get there, and I had a week there. Went on patrols and met all the boys, your team and all that. And I came back after a week, and I felt useless. I
In what
actually
sense?
felt, in the sense that, what do I do? What have I got to moan about in
Right.
life? What the problems that I have in my life are nothing.
Right.
And I came back on a plane with the injured. I went to Solioke, I went to rehabilitation. And I came home feeling that I wanted to go back.
I'm not surprised that you felt like that, Ray. That experience that you must have had in such a short space of time, it clearly had a life-changing impact on you. And I think particularly coming back on a plane with those who are injured and seeing them at their most vulnerable. Ken, Ray's spoken about coming back on that plane, going to hospital and then rehab, which must have been the start of your journey. But how do you even begin to deal with it?
Well, it's a massive thing to deal with, and it's very overwhelming. I suppose the one bonus I had was I had a lot of time to think and work things out. And one of the things we always had in the army was we'd sit round with a brew and we'd sort a lot of problems out. And I kind of like just adopted that, and talking to people just really, really helped. Whether I was talking to doctors or nurses or people who came to visit me, I found it just really helped.
It's changed with our generation a little bit, because our fathers were very Victorian in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved my dad, you loved your
Yeah,
dad,
yeah,
and they loved
massively,
you,
yeah.
but you couldn't actually sit down with them and have a chat about I've had a bad day, Dad, and I've met this girl that I love, and you couldn't talk to Dad about things like that, But I don't know whether it's because of what we've been into and the people we've met in our generation, and maybe our generation's fought against that a little bit, that we're a little bit more open about having a chat. Just to chat about things like this.
Because you didn't have that choice when you were
Yeah,
younger.
it never happened when I was a kid. We were coming out of the Second World War, and it was Victorian. We hadn't moved on from the Victorian times in a way, you know. Yeah. It was still that kind of stiff upper lip, and you know.
And it wasn't a done thing.
No.
And there is a real seismic change that people are talking more, and we're seeing the benefits of it, and why it's so important to be honest, to tell your stories, and.
There are some things I talk to my kids, and I do feel uncomfortable, but I force myself to do it. And because I go, I wish my dad had talked to me like that.
But do you think that's kind of like something that we've learned from not being able to do that with our dads?
I think so. One thing that I found hard was all the tours that I'd done, Northern Ireland, Iraq, and things like that, I'd gone and I dealt with it. Afghanistan was a different kettle of fish for me. And I remember I went for a pint with my dad, and I really wanted to talk to him about Afghanistan. I was trying to find the moment, I was trying to lean into it. And he was moving away from it. He didn't want to talk about it, and that was quite obvious. And that really hurt me. It was his way of dealing with it. He didn't want to talk about it, but I needed to talk to him about it as an old soldier himself.
Yeah,
I needed to have that discussion because there wasn't many people that I could have that discussion with. And I found that really, really difficult. And it kind of like makes me go, right, whatever this situation is, I will have these uncomfortable... I will always... try for my kids rather than, I don't want to do that. It feels difficult. Yeah. And that's it,
Do you feel the same with your girls? Because you're also a grandpa.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Things changed for me, I think, when my mum was dying of cancer. And
that was at quite a young age.
She was 52, I was 28, and she was in a coma, and I got to the hospital for the visit, and she'd come out of the coma. Cancer's a very cruel disease in a way. It gives you hope and then whacks you, But in the hour that I was there on my own with her, she opened up and she talked to me about my dad, about things that needed to be done, and it was such a relief for me, such a release, that I actually got the time to talk to my mum before she died. And although it took me a year to get over that, over the whole thing, I'm not over it, but I didn't realise that I had a little bit of a breakdown. When you have a little bit of a breakdown, I think you don't know it. I think everyone else knows it, but no one talks to you about it, And and I was quite angry. And
when was this? Within the year after your mum died?
Yeah, this is a year on, and I was very short-fused with people. I wouldn't stand for anyone.
Just really angry
horrible,
with everyone.
Horrible, really horrible, And I remember driving back one day from Bristol, and the sun was setting behind me, and I just caught it in the mirror. And I had to pull up when I broke down, and it seemed to release everything. You never forget, and it hurts, but that kind of thing of just having that time with her taught me a lot, I think, about opening up and having a chat with my girls,
that you had that time.
It's like she woke up just to talk, and then a couple of days, boom, gone, but there you go.
But that time just is with you.
Absolutely. It meant everything, because she told me things about my dad. She talked about my dad in a way which was quite beautiful, and told me about things that needed to be done that Dad wouldn't have done, just so we got that all sorted out. So even though, it's quite a human thing in a way, she knows she's going, but she wants to make sure everything's in the right place for everyone else.
Yes.
It makes me very proud of her in a way, so, and I needed that. So, and I think the thing about depression and things like that is, I don't think it's happening to you sometimes,
Everyone around you, as you said, knows and is aware.
Yeah.
Because some of the veterans have told me they have this light bulb moment where they, they're in a really bad situation, but they just sort of suddenly, I know the way I'm going to move forward. Yeah. So that time in Bristol when the sunlight was in your wing mirror, is that your kind of...
Yeah, it just kind of hit me. I know it sounds really dramatic,
No,
and being an actor, I can't help it. But I was great because it was a release.
You just allowed yourself to feel.
Yeah. And I must have been there 10 minutes, just... And I hadn't cried. I hadn't cried at all for a year.
Wow.
Just anger.
Yeah.
Did you find, once you'd done that, did you recognise at that point that mentally there was something going on.
Yeah, I think so.
Since then, have you had any times where you've gone, well, I'm disappearing down this hole a bit, recognised it and found a way to deal with it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I found that as well. One of the hardest things I find hard is going out and actually doing something. Sometimes it's just easy to just stay in and that. And what I find is I've got nothing to do. I'd lie on my bed. I'd lie on my bed with my iPad in front of me.
Yeah. And
eventually I'll be going, I recognise in myself, right, I'm disappearing down a hole here. I've got to get and do something. Got to, and the first time I didn't really realise it was happening. And Chris, my wife, said to me, she said, you're depressed. We've got to go and do something. We've got to. And fortunately from then, I've learnt to recognise that little bit and go, right, I've got to do this. That's happening. I've got to do this. Even if I really, really don't want to do it, I really have to force myself to do it because I know what the consequences are.
Yeah.
But that first time is really, really hard, and you don't like talking about it. You're like, wait on, I'm a bloke. I'm this. I've got this. You've got this internal persona of yourself, and I just found I didn't want to admit that, and it was really hard to. I
know when I've had down moments, I get really angry because I don't want to feel like this.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because, I do, so I need to go and get help.
Yeah.
But the trouble is you could think, I get really grumpy. And you think, I'm an old man. It's what old men do, it and moan about everything. And that's a different thing. But you can feel, as you said, you just feel yourself everything kind of getting on top of you. There's always someone in your ear. Someone wants this. That needs to be done. You need to go, and you go, why don't you just leave me alone for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Just go away, leave me alone for 10 minutes. And you realise that you're just falling into that hole again.
You're at capacity.
And you're right. You feel like you just want to sit on the settee, watch the telly in a darkened room. And you've got to say to yourself, I need to go out. I need to go out and do something.
And it's interesting that both of you have said that it was family that have helped you.
It's funny that I was just talking to my mum last night, and she's in her 70s, and we were having this chat, and she'd gone outside, and then she'd got this big metal gate, and she'd gone to open it, and it had fallen off its hinges. She's all right, but we're having a chat, and we're having this, and I'm like thinking, well, if it was my old self before I was injured, I'd have been round there, a bit, bit of cement, remount it, job done. And I was saying, I'm really sorry, Mum. I'm just, there's not much I can do for you. I feel really useless. Yeah. What I'll do is, I know someone who'll come out and do it for you. I'll sort it all out. I'll pay for it. And she's telling me off. She's going, you're not useless because you survived. You're still here. You're still my son, and that's the thing. And I got thinking about how I am as a dad and my two, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of get it, but I still feel useless. It's strange.
It's lovely though that however old you are, you're still your mum's son.
That's it, regardless.
And she recognises the massive journey that you've been on. And actually being able to fix a gate doesn't matter, but I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine that you clearly find that quite hard to.
And it does. It's little things like that come back and, just gives you a bit of a slap in the face, and you think, oof. You've got to get over that. You've got to go, right, that is no longer the case. This is my life now.
But clearly your children, your family have had such a massive impact on you and really supported you.
Well, yeah, it gives you a reason to live. I mean, you're a mum yourself, and lots of people are parents out there, and they'll understand what it means. You kind of you live for your kids. It gives you purpose. You might want to strangle them one day, but it's unconditional. It's unconditional love, isn't it? And I suppose that's what my mum was saying to me. It doesn't matter how useless I feel. She doesn't find me. She doesn't think of me useless. She's just glad that I'm here. And my kids aren't useless. They're great. But I do know that if they were useless, I'd love them regardless.
So to you both, Ray first, what do you think your family would say about you if they were here now?
What, in front of us? I think I know my kids love me.
Yes.
And I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So, they love me as much as I love them. So it's fine.
I think they'd be incredibly
proud. There's special moments.
That's what you got to think of when it's all going pear-shaped.
Yeah. I was injured on November the 15th, and it's also a difficult time for me anyway because it's all about remembrance and things like that. And I was there, and I just try and grind through the days in and around that day. And I was sat there at the table, and the telly's off in the background, and I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just staring into the distance. And I just start crying. I just start crying. And my son came in. He's 15 years old. You know what 15-year-old boys are like, you know. And he just, you're right, Dad. And he just gave me a big hug. And to get that from your 15-year-old boy, that's
sweet,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Everything's going to be all right because I've got my son here, and I've got my daughter, and I've got a wife, and I've got people who care about me, and I knew it was a moment, and I shouldn't be ashamed for feeling like that at that time to get through it, and we were just going to be able to get on.
And clearly your son thinks the absolute world of you, and it's so strong of you to be that honest and brave, when I can imagine it was actually really hard to show your vulnerability in front of your son as a man and kind of a father. And I just think that must have had such a positive impact on your children, that you're honest about your mental health, you're honest how you feel, and you're not indestructible and you're human. And I just think that's such a beautiful story, that you drew strength from your son, and you know, it wasn't the other way round. Ken, I mean, you've spoken to me before about how important it is using your voice. What do you mean by that?
Well, I was an extremely fit soldier. I was doing a job that I absolutely loved, and dealing with the bombs, that helped save people's lives. And then suddenly I'm injured, that's all taken away from me, and I'm lying there looking back and feeling very depressed about what's happened to me. The only thing I've got left is my voice and my mind, I suppose. And fortunately, through yourself and everything, I've learnt to use them to help people. So I don't have to deal with them bombs to help people anymore. I can use my voice to help people as well. And I get the same sense of satisfaction as I did before. And it gives me a purpose to keep going on. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning.
And why do you feel it's so important to tell your story?
It's just, I just want people. It's not so much about the content of the story, and in some ways, it's probably not the best story for people to hear, because I don't want them to think, oh, that guy's lost his legs and this has happened. What's happened to me? I'm being bullied, or I'm having a bad day at work. That's not important. That is important. That is very important, because life is all about enjoyment. One thing I have learnt with this is, you've got to get the best out of life. You've got to try and enjoy life. And if that important thing's your family, or it's your work, or anything like that, that's what your goal is. And if something's stopping you, if something's upsetting you or making it difficult, that's an adversity. And that's what we've got to get over that, so we can get to the enjoyment bit. And it's how we deal with that. And, you know, it's not easy. You need a way, and a way that works for you. And there are many different ways of doing that. We're just hoping by talking, someone might say, actually, they might talk within their little group, and they might start disclosing things, and then it gets that little bit easier to just to start talking.
And Ray, I was going to say to you, you've spoken a lot, you're very passionate about people being confident to go and talk and use their voice. Yeah. Why are you so passionate about that?
It's something that I've kind of come to terms with as I've got older, I guess. I always found it very difficult walking into a room anyway. You know, I always felt a little bit like I shouldn't be there.
Okay.
You know, especially in the business that I'm in, you know.
So what, when you were younger, or do you still
Yeah, when I first
like
came in,
that?
it was because I didn't speak the Queen's English. And,
Okay.
you know, it was, you know, especially in the theatre, it was quite snobby in the theatre. I thought it was, but there was a
Okay.
kind of inverted snobbery involved in that as well, because I've worked in the theatre and I've been treated so well and had such a great time. It was something that was in my head. Right. It wasn't there, if you understand what I mean. So you kind of invent this persona, and you go, it's the same as getting in a boxing ring, you know, you just put your chest out, you walk in. And what happens then is, Elaine says, why are you looking so angry when you walk into a room? You know, and I said, well, no one wants to talk. Of course I don't want to talk to you. You look like you want to kill everyone.
So that's your persona.
Well, you know, so you walk in right hard, like,
Okay.
you know, and no one would want to talk to you anyway, because they thought you was a raving lunatic. So then you have to come to terms with it. You have to try and calm that down. But it was quite a thing for me, because something in me, and it was all my problem.
That's so amazing to hear that someone like you, who's this, seemingly tough guy, confident.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
I mean, I think for anyone who's suffering from nerves or a lack of confidence, then remember that even Ray Winstone gets nervous, but perhaps don't use his technique. So, Ken, when you're in one of your, let's say, your darkest moments, where do you find your strength to move forward?
Oh, it's strange. When you talked about Sai earlier on, you mentioned how busy it is during the day. It is, and people come in and you kind of like go, right, I need to entertain this person. They've come to see me, I need to entertain them. So, and you're knackered. But we also talked about bringing the kids in to see me. And it was like, no, we can't yet. Wait until I'm a bit better. I don't want to see you like this. My kids were 6 and 10 at the time. And eventually one day I just had a little bit of a breakdown. I said, I really need to see the kids. Do you think it'll be all right? Do you think they'll be able to do this? And apparently I didn't realise, and I was told this from a year later, when my kids came in, it was kind of like everyone, all the nurses and I was saying, Ken's kids are coming in today, Ken's kids are coming in. When my kids come in, they had to walk all the way through this ward. Yeah. We were in the very end bay 6. Yeah. They had to walk all the way through, and it just all went quiet as they went by.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like it was a hell of a moment that they did that, and I just wanted to cry, but I had to be a dad. And they came in, and little Harry's only 6, and Neve's only 10, and you can see in their faces they're destroyed by it. This is absolutely destroyed. They're very uncomfortable. They don't know how to deal with this.
It's a big moment for them, isn't it?
And in the end, I just said, "Listen, I've not got any legs." Yeah. But I'm still here, and I'm still your dad, and that's all that's important. Yeah. We will be all right. And one of the little things I always say to them is, no matter how hard things are, keep going, keep pushing on, because you only fail when you give up.
Absolutely. You found the strength you needed from your children and your role as being a dad. And Ray, in Ken's words, how do you keep going, keep pushing on when you've had challenging times? What's your biggest source of strength?
It's family. Of course it is. I mean, it's changed over the years. I've never been ambitious in the fact that I wanted to be a film star. I mean, that really just happened by chance. I got a work ethic. I actually, from being a young kid, I'd always be at work with my dad at weekends, and then when I got to 15, 16, I'd be working in the markets. I was always out, up early in the morning, going to work. And I kind of, to say you enjoy going to work, I guess that's the right word. I like going to work. It gives me a pride, that, I can look and feed my family, and I can look after them, and I can give them the things in life that I want to give them and they might need. And I'm proud of that. But I think my ambitions changed when I had my first child, my Lois, and then I had my 2 other girls, and for me, then I needed to go to work, and it really upped my game, because if I was going to do it, I was going to do it properly.
We're very lucky, but I think we're both very lucky that we have family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just a bit conscious. Some of the people that we're trying to help here, trying to reach out to, they don't have that. They don't have. They're not in that fortunate position. But you also talked about earlier where you come together so often. You have that comfortable atmosphere where people, friends that you've known for years, and you can come back to. And you're not Ray the movie star. You're just Ray,
just the novice boxer.
And that you're Ray that they knew about. You're Ray from the East End. That's what they know. Yeah. So I'm very, very lucky in that respect that I have those people that I've been able to trust and talk to them and be able to say, this is what's really bothering me, and do that. And I think that's the important thing. If you've got someone to talk to, then, if you've got friends, and you're very lucky. There are some people who are very, very alone, who don't have that ability.
Don't have that backup.
But there are lots of people out there who help.
So how have friends helped you, Ken?
One of the big things that bothered me was, my job was to dispose of bombs safely. The last job I did, I didn't dispose of that bomb. So I'm thinking, I've messed up here. What have I done wrong? How can I deal with... What other way could I have done? Could I have dealt with that safely? And it had always bothered me. It really, really hurt me, and I felt ashamed. And it was very, very difficult to deal with that in my head. And I was talking to this one guy, and I told him the story. I told him what had happened. And I just went, I cannot think of anything else I could have done. And he said to me, he said, no decision that you made would feel right to you, but you can't deal with that. We can't even make that into a training task because you can't deal with it. Right. It's an impossible job. And what you did was the right thing to do. The fact that he said that now allows me to move on. I've now dealt with that. I don't feel ashamed anymore. I dealt with that as best we can. It was war.
And I also think what you've just said there, Ken, is that you have accepted, you found your peace, so you are able to move on. And I think whatever happens to us as individuals, if something as extreme as stepping on a bomb and it blowing up and you becoming injured, or your mother passing away at an early age, it's however long it takes. Eventually, when that acceptance comes, you'll never totally forget, or you're not that same person again, but you're able to move forward.
Anger just takes up so much energy. I've never understood anger.
There's a thing in Scum I remember years ago. I forget the figures, but there is on a matchbox. Archer says it on a matchbox. It takes 53 muscles to frown and only 16 to smile, so why waste energy?
So smiling is the way forward then. So what's it been like having a chat today and speaking to each other? What have you got out of this?
It's like a release. Something like this for me is... Because you never know what you're going to get. You never know what someone else is going to say or what their problems are or whatever. But I quite like it because it makes... I feel really mellow now. I came in like a raving lunatic, and I actually feel. I mean, it's needless to say the respect I have for Ken anyway, and for you, Alice, But I feel really chilled. Yeah, we should do this every day.
Yeah, I love it.
I've been saying when everything was setting up, I've really been looking forward to this. And it's an experience in itself. And as much as we're doing this, to hopefully encourage people to find ways of dealing with whatever problems they're facing, to make people more resilient, to help people. It helps me as well.
Absolutely.
It's massive. Hopefully, this thing will be contagious, and people will go, well, actually,
sit down and have a chat. That's what it is,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? That's the message, really.
Yeah,
isn't it? It's great. You can have a chat with anyone.
Well, I want to say thank you both so much for being here, and as you say, Ray, having a chat. Everyone, Ray Winstone and Ken Bellringer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.